very interesting connection between human behavior
Yeah.
and the limit with your frontier and all of that.
Right.
Because in New York, definitely. I mean, it's toy everywhere.
Everything. You know, I've been, unfortunately, as I said, conveying the same message for a long time, which is bothersome because, you know, I was sort of hoping that I'd be able to say it once and dust my hands off. But, you know, I knew in the back of my head that it was going to be necessary for somebody to go on and say, no, this is what I meant. This is, no, not this thing you're doing right now. Don't get all excited. It's going to take some time. But this is what I meant.
And what's the message?
The message is that the idea that value is a function of scarcity is wrong. That the industrial model, as useful as it was for a particular part of the human metamorphosis, is no longer a useful way to approach much of human economy, which is now, you know, based in attention and time, which is the really valuable stuff. I mean, for most of the wealthy part of the planet, you know, money is cheap and attention is expensive.
So have you worked out a new intellectual property system?
Oh no! I mean,
open?
no. Well, the idea that it would be called property just seems dumb to me. You know, I mean, we had a perfectly good system for a long time, which was, you know, patronage, payment for services, relationship. You know, most people who make their living with their mind, I mean, I don't know why this is so radical. I mean, there are a lot of people in this world who make their living with their mind, right? More and more all the time. Very few of them use intellectual property law to protect their ability to do so. You know, lawyers, ironically enough, don't copyright their writs, even if they're about copyright. You know, architects, doctors, I mean, do doctors copyright their prescriptions? No. Because the real value is in the relationship between them and the patient. You know, and what this mind can process with regard to the subject at hand. But, you know, we're still enchanted by this notion of, you know, mass distribution at a time when mass distribution doesn't count that much anymore. I mean, economically, you know, it's not necessary for you to, you know, get everybody on the planet to know who you are in order for you to make money with your head. I mean, in fact, these days, if you approach it that way, you end up like Michael Jackson, which doesn't strike me as an optimal solution. You know, better to be kind of a steady local hero in some part of the human consciousness.
Somewhere in the long tail sphere.
Well, you know, I actually think this long tail thing is a useful concept, though it's getting, you know, ridiculously overused. I mean, maybe there's some resentment on the fact that I feel like the Grateful Dead came up with that too. You know, I mean, in those, you know, when we were first making records, you know, it was assumed that if you didn't have a Boffo hit right out of the box, then you were like washed up. You know, and all of our records went platinum eventually. Sometimes took them like 25 years. You talk about a long tail.
Last year, Mark Cuban was the keynote speaker.
Well, this was probably both different and the same.
Really?
I would guess. I mean, you know, knowing Mark, I mean,
you know him?
Yeah.
He
was even more narcissistic than I am. And shoots from the hip, you know, like, you know, I shoot from the hip with a 6-shooter. He shoots from the hip with an AK-47.
Can you compare and contrast his position and your position on intellectual so-called?
Well, no. I mean, I think Mark and I sort of get it in kind of the same way. He's a well. I mean, the fundamental difference is that I'm wary of money. I mean, this will sound like an easy thing to say, but I mean, I could have made a lot of money at various points. You know, being positioned where I was and knowing what I knew and who I knew. But I didn't really want to do that because I could see that it would screw people up. And, you know, Mark took a different view, and, you know, he has to bear the consequences. But, which are good. I mean, I'm glad that he did because, he has a lot of energy behind what I would consider to be a joint point of view, that money can provide.
Did you have the same opinion as he on the YouTube, Google, or the YouTube issue?
I don't know what his opinion is on that, actually.
He thought buying YouTube was crazy because of the intellectual property.
No, but it just seems, I don't know what, I mean, see, I know those guys at Google and I knew the Google whiz kids when they were graduate students, and I've known Eric Schmidt since he was like, a product designer at Sun. And they're all, they're amazingly smart guys, and they continuously surprise me. And they'll do something that is seems nonsensical to me, and it'll turn out to be very smart. This time I think they may have there's always a moment where you become too smart by half. And I think YouTube is a useless investment, actually. Because all YouTube is a market. And what's going to happen is that market's going to be universal. You just have to figure out ways to create the sorting mechanism, which will, I believe, will naturally develop. That's what happens, I think. Look at a coral reef. A coral reef is an information sorting system. It sorts photons. And it's damn good at it. Rainforest does the same thing. And it takes a long time to develop one of those. It doesn't happen overnight. But we'll figure out a way to do this. Now, YouTube is a very primitive way of sorting these little 7-minute thingamajigs, in the vast sea of human attention.
Is YouTube likely to be sued because of the so-called infringements on...
Oh, well, yeah, of course. But it's like, who's responsible here? Find the responsible party. This is why the whole thing is just like completely absurd. We can as a species, we can fall into a spasm of massive suit, until we can't do a goddamn thing, or we can just say, well, let's get over it. Let's find another way.